You are listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Proteum Machining, and this week I am happy to welcome my book club co-host, Chris Zappettini, back again. How's it going, man?
Yeah, living the dream, per usual.
Well, why don't we do a quick update from the last time we spoke? We were both kind of in the weeds, having a depressing and rough beginning to the year. How are you doing? How's everything? How's business? Any more employee things? What's going on, man?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I would say I'm kind of wrangled my issues or so. Like I had a really intense conversation with one of my biggest customers right now about like payment and stuff because things were just wonky. And now, like the relationship was kind of fractured, but it was like both of us wanted the other to work with. Like we still want to work together, but it was just weird and tense, and then we just kind of had like a little bit of like a knockout drag out conversation, and now we're back on pace, which is good. I might be losing another guy, I don't know, like for realsies, we'll see. He's on a break, I think I had mentioned that before on the last one, is that he was working at the time, now he's on his break. He might not want to travel anymore, which is interesting for us.
Yeah, kind of the nature of the job.
Yeah, so we kind of got to figure that out, but it's not super pressing right now. But it might be, because like I had a bunch of really good calls and like meetings this week about like full build automation systems, which I'm like really revved up for. So like I like finally like sat down and just like went through my finances, and we're up like almost double where we were for Q1 that we were last year, which is awesome. And then found like I have like my debt will be paid off in like 3.5 months or whatever, like exactly, which is a good feeling. It's nice to know that. I mean, it pretty much means that I'm going to be working 7 days a week, probably like 15, 16-hour days for 3.5 months. But hey, I'm on site at a customer in Gunnison, Utah right now with but this is, I mean, shout out to Pallet Systems, right? I did 4 setups today. Now I have 2 hours of runtime where I'm here, I'm monitoring, but machines are running, everybody's happy.
That's killer. So yeah, if all of a sudden Chris has to run, it's because something happened with the machine. Let's hope not.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's awesome, man. I'm really happy to hear.
See the green lights back there. So
yeah, exactly. No, that's great. I feel like we both kind of had a turnaround from the last time we spoke. A lot of like doom and gloom last time, and I'm in the same boat. Yeah. Like we really killed it the last, I don't know, month or something, just getting orders out. Like we shipped 3 orders early this week, which was, ooh. I know, yeah, very different. It's like, oh man, like I was right up to the edge on so many, and then Friday I had one that wasn't due till like the 12th of this month, and I was like, oh, it's easy, I'll just bust it out and knocked it out, shipped it, packed it, all that stuff. It's like, cool, all right,
sick. Yeah.
So it's been good.
And you showed me like one of the best emails ever.
Yeah. I had a customer reach out with an unsolicited thank you, and just out of nowhere, just like, hey, thanks for great parts and being a great partner. It was like, cool. Yeah. That's amazing.
Like I think I texted you when you showed me that. I was like, I'm so used to this being like the most thankless job I've ever had, where it's like it's never, you did a fantastic job. It's always, why are you fucking this up right now?
Right. Yeah, exactly. No news is good news usually. Like,
yeah,
no email from parts is usually what I hope for. But getting that, and it was like completely just out of the blue. Like it was on Friday, we were doing a chip run, and it was like all of a sudden I get that email, and I was like, oh, cool. That just made my day. That just made my week. Like I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Cool.
Sick.
Well, that's great, man. Let's get into the book then. Extreme Ownership. What'd you think? This is your first time reading it?
Oh, yeah. So, I should probably get us a little something out of the way. That, like, we started reading this at the end of December, early January.
And I believe people can quote me as saying, next week we will record this.
Yeah. But, like, it also, like, ended up being, like, weird. I mean, I went to London and stuff. I had all the junk with me in case, but, like, I think we were both just, like, busy. But at the beginning of January, like I had that wild thing happen where like somebody that I know shot somebody a bunch of times, and it really put me in a weird mindset with this book in particular, because it's like very based around war, and like he was a veteran who suffers from PTSD and everything, and so it's like it kind of skewed it. I had to read it twice because the first time I was like, this is like fucking propaganda almost,
Right.
like very mass. He's like, it's not a war memoir, but it's like 75% a war memoir,
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
25% like, oh, how this affects business. Like they had problems, and I told them not to have problems, and they're like, oh, sick. But I read it again like this week, and I was able to take more away from it, which was better. But the thing that struck me the most was I liked it. The discipline section at the very, very end was the one that got me, because that's the one that I've been struggling with since I've been like burned out for 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, I can definitely, I feel that too. And I think that that's a prelude to their next book, which I still haven't read actually. The Dichotomy of Leadership is the next book in the series.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the third time I think I've gone through the book. I just finished it up today, this morning. And
did you get anything new out of it?
Yeah, I think it's like a good reminder. Like you said, a lot of it is just war stories and fluff stuff. But I think that kind of makes it, if you're not a business book person, it kind of makes it an easy access into the lessons of the thing.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that like, I mean, we kind of talked on and off air. Like Brad and I both have to be leaders, and I was realizing I was being kind of a shitty leader and just getting really weighed down with all of the muck that was going on. And so it was just kind of a reminder of like, hey, this affects things. Like this will change the course of your business. Being a good leader, regardless if you're not leading anybody or not leading a subordinate, but like being a good leader is just for yourself. Like it's going back to that discipline.
Yeah.
So to run down the chapters, first one, they introduce extreme ownership. Second one, no bad teams, only bad leaders. Again, extreme ownership as a leader, you got to look back on yourself and just be like, I'm not doing something that is leading these people to do what I don't like. 3 is believe, which, a lot of these I think are the same concept or very near concepts repeated. Like believe is also leading up and down the chain, is also, they're like, they all kind of tie into each other, but believe is just making everyone involved in the team believe the mission, and flowing down why the mission is happening, like why we're doing something a certain way, rather than just saying, just do it because I told you to.
Yeah.
Check the ego. I think that one's pretty obvious. Cover and move, I think, is a pretty good one. You don't want to over leverage yourself in any, monetarily or any kind of way. Like, I think that's something. Yeah. As small business owners, I think that we all have a really hard time towing that line of like, I need to. Oh, go for it.
I was going to say, I think Jay Pearson said it really, really well the last time, like the most recent time he was on the podcast, which is like, if you're driving on the freeway, if you drive too fast, like statistically, you're more likely to hit somebody. And if you drive too slow, like you're more likely to get hit. And so like that balance is like, I think about that all the fucking time now, especially as someone who like I grew way too fast and now I'm scaling back.
Right, but it's hard to know. It's one of those things that, I didn't know I was doing 10 over the speed limit until I look back on it. And I'm like, oh, I was flying past all the other cars for some reason.
Yeah.
It's not something, there's no speedometer for small businesses. It's like as easy as looking down at the gauges. You're just like, I think I'm doing the right thing for what's going on. And then it's only in retrospect that you're like, oh, no, I should have slowed down a little bit. Simple, again, another pretty self-explanatory one. You got to keep your plan simple. Overcomplicating things really will bite you in the ass every single time.
Yeah.
Prioritize and execute, another great one. I think that when shit hits the fan, that's something that I've continually had to work on, is not just like trying to put out 10 fires at once, but like making sure each one is put out as I go through them. Like not trying to like, spray all corners of my room with the fire extinguisher at the same time, but really just like working through it is tough. decentralized command, just basically making sure that everybody that works with you has the power and the wherewithal to lead as well. You can't be everywhere at once. You can't lead everyone at once. The plan one I thought was the weakest chapter personally. Like I felt like they're like, oh yeah, you need to have this standardized planning method, and they go into it, and then their seal example basically was them saying, oh no, we went away from our standard planning one, and this is the way we did it.
It got really weird towards the end, for sure, where it's like, I'm not sure what's happening here.
Yeah. Because the business example was a seal example. Like it was him talking to a business leader and then telling a seal story. And I was like, this is a little hat on a hat for me. But
yeah.
10 is another one that I think is super important, and is something that I see many leaders falling into issues with leading up and down the chain, like not flowing down things to their subordinates, so that I feel like it goes hand in hand with belief, like leading down the chain at least. I think that I see a lot of people just say, just do it because I said so. And like, it's frustration because they just don't want so many questions. But I think that whole idea of a commander's intent is something that like we all need to work on. Like, making everybody under us realize the goal and the bounds that they're able to work in.
Which is like, it's just like core tenets of just change management in general. Which is like, there's like a couple of concepts outside of just like having accountability and candor in this book, which is like kind of how it's advertised as, like, it's just extreme ownership, like whose fault is this, and like, it's my fault, everybody's fault, whatever. And then it gets into things like hardcore change management, like extreme change management. Like, okay,
yeah, for sure. Decisiveness amid uncertainty, I think, is basically the same thing as prioritize and execute. Like maybe a little bit, like I thought the business example was a good one. And I think that that's another one that I have seen personally affect companies I've worked at, where they are so afraid of firing somebody because they don't want to train up somebody new, or they don't think that there's somebody to replace them, that they let that poisonous person just like dictate the company forever.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm a big, especially like if that person has any amount of talent, oh my God, it's a nightmare. But like, I'm a big advocate for culture over talent always. Cause like, yeah, the toxicity, that'll sink your company more than anything. And a buddy of mine who I went to college with, his name's Roger Carter. I think he works for like Blue Origin now or something. But he said something to me a while ago, which I don't think it's not like his thing, but it's like, if you put your finger in a glass of water and remove your finger, there's no void, like it fills in. And that's business. Like if your business is built on some random person, like leaving is going to collapse the whole thing, you probably have a bigger issue. You know what I mean?
Right. You've built a Jenga tower, not a glass of water.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
Yeah. And then the last chapter, like you said, was, discipline equals freedom, basically. And realizing that the more you have an established discipline, the more freedom it allows you to go outside those bounds if you need to. But yeah, I think that like the reason I wanted to read this book is I think that there are so many little things in here that I have seen over and over and over in businesses I've worked in, where it's just like extreme ownership in general, I think, is something that we all struggle with. Nobody wants to take the blame ever. And really, I think the last time I read this, at the last company I worked at, I think the president had read this book and I saw it on his shelf. So I read it. And then we ended up going through it as a company and reading through it in groups, kind of doing a book club. Like it was 1 or 2 chapters every other week or something like that. And I completely lost my train of thought.
Why you want to go through it?
Oh, yeah. No, didn't help.
No.
No.
The thing that got me is it is there were some things like I personally like to think that I hold myself accountable. So like in general, extreme ownership, like I blame myself for everything anyway. I mean, you know what I mean? It's especially because like I'm the sole owner of my company. So anything that happens is mostly my decision. And so I can't really like point above me. Like God didn't make me do it. I did it myself, you know?
Right.
And like that. So initially I was kind of curious, like there was the little things, the whole leadership thing I really liked. Cause it did make me question. I've always considered myself like a pretty effective leader. And then I think about like seeing this and it's like, oh, that's a good point. Cause like the guy that I fired, I would say like before I was like, he did this and he did that and blah, blah, blah. And like, I could have probably handled that situation better. It would have mostly required me to be micromanaging him, but I probably could have done like the better way to do that would be more in-depth check-ins, you know,
Right. Yeah.
and one-on-ones and things like that to actually check the progress of the project, that the one single project he was working on, to make sure that we weren't falling behind and what he said was happening was actually happening. The weird thing for me there is that my other guys, I don't need to do that with, you know? And so there's the other aspect of that they flipped is what the one that I liked was the whole CEO telling the salespeople something and then that her not receiving information back. And that was I mean, everything, I mean, I think I said this on the first episode that I was on, which is like business is a two-way street. It's like if you're a good fit, like if you're communicating, that communication has to flow both ways because I don't know how to help you if I don't know how to help you, you know? If you don't tell me that you have an issue, then I can't get you going. But also if I'm not like pressing enough, especially when we're like having problems, then that's on me to figure out how to like do little check-ins to make sure that everything's going well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that touches on a few chapters like decentralized command and leading up and down the chain. Like you were spoiled by two of your guys being excellent at leading up the chain and delivering you all of the stuff that they knew you wanted. And so the one that didn't, you're like, oh, well, he must not have any problems because I don't hear anything from him. Like,
exactly.
That makes total sense. It's just tough. Like it really is tough to know. Like you don't want to bug a person and make them miserable because you're like overbearing, but you also like it is that dichotomy of leadership of like I need to have an upper and a lower limit of intervention, and finding that middle point is really tough to find.
Yeah,
I remembered my thought. So the second time I read it, I realized this whole idea of extreme ownership really is just a way to. So blame in general is unproductive and it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It doesn't matter who did what. It only matters about the plan there forward. Yeah. And so like the whole idea of extreme ownership is really just like a mental exercise to leap over any amount of blame. Like it's just like, you know what, I'll take it. I screwed up. I did something wrong. We can figure that out at the end in our after action report, or you know, our whatever you want to call it, and I'll do better on that next time. But from here on out, we need to prioritize whatever the plan is and make sure that this doesn't happen and gets fixed immediately.
Yeah. So like my practical example there with my guy is once I realized, like, especially because we have been dealing with financial issues, and I realized like very quickly, like, oh, this is a problem. I pretty much fired him immediately and went to my customer, kind of explained the situation, like really kind of asked, like, I was like, hey, here's what's going on. Like, I know we are here and we should be there. And like, I need money. This is kind of where we're at. Like, you just kind of give me an advance on this and I'll bring in this guy, that guy, whatever. And I hit up a couple of friends who do robot programming. One of them got back to me right away. So I got him as a contractor. And that turnaround was basically like a day. You know, I went from the most mad I've ever been professionally and then I was like, I just like went to sleep. I didn't do anything. I just went to bed and I woke up and was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And just kind of put that plan in motion. And for the most part, it worked out. We pretty much scrapped, like we had to start the project over 5 months in to a 3-month project, you know.
That's rough.
It's brutal. But, you know, wouldn't like just hardcore recovery, and we're more or less back on track at this point. But like, Yeah, the plan is the only thing that matters, because like delivery, like I mean, kind of going back to critical chain and stuff, like delivery is the only thing that matters more than anything. Like finding out who did the wrong thing and how it went wrong, like that's post-mortem stuff, you know? We could figure that out later, but right now we have a job to do, and that's getting parts out the door, completing a project, whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's how you keep customers. Like, I think that for anybody who's running a small job shop or, manufacturing company, extreme ownership can really be applied with your customers too. Because like when they call you and they're angry at you or whatever, they don't like, they just want to hear, I'm sorry, here's the plan.
Yeah.
And like the faster you can get to that of like, oh, I'm sorry, it's our fault, here's what we're going to do to fix it, like that will turn the conversation around so quickly.
Oh yeah, just having a solution is always going to trump just about anything. It's when it's like nobody wants. I was just having a conversation with my old boss about this, like in methods, and he's like, a lot of people just like shit talk their system for doing projects. Like, oh, this is a problem and that's a problem and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but it's effective. It works. And if you don't have a solution, kind of shut the fuck up and do your job. Because it does nothing to complain about it, you know?
And I think we've all been in, root cause corrective action meetings or something where they just want to like sit there and pick every little detail apart. And you're like, there are still parts on the machine. Can we get those running first? Like, can we actually try to meet our customer's date, or like, try to not be 8 months late and try to be like a couple months late instead? Like there's, I don't know how many meetings I've been in like that with customers where it's like, I understand that, you have your standards to uphold or whatever, and you have to do these meetings, but like, can we start with the corrective action and then go back and like, while I'm making parts, do the root cause? Like, can we make money while we're doing this? Because otherwise, I've been in them before where it's like, oh, well, let's call in this machinist. Okay, now let's call in this machinist. Okay, now let's analyze what they said and fit. It's like, is this helping anybody? Is this making anybody money? Like, is this helping the business at all? Make money? No,
it never does. Like, oh, yeah, it's so interesting. It's these like non-value add activities that seem important, and they just really add nothing. And this, like, you got spindles idle, and everyone's just trying to like, hey, you, let's go. Like, we're not gaining anything by doing this.
Oh yeah,
please stop.
I've been in corrective action meetings where there's like 7 or 8 machinists too, and you're like,
that's insane.
None of their spindles are turning. Like, this is crazy. Like, it needs to be done. I completely agree. And so we got one question from Develop LLC of like, discuss the balance of ownership. At some point, those machinists also need to own up of like, yeah, we all screwed up parts. Like, that's why we're all here. But like, at the same time, we need to figure out a way to do this quickly and not like pick apart. We don't need a 3-hour meeting for one mistake. It's just stupid.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because a lot of that ends up leading to like extremely bloated processes and QMSs and things like that, where you have like, you try and process out all of this kind of goes into the decisiveness thing, where you end up creating this environment and culture of indecisiveness because every mistake gets litigated to death. And so people just start to not do things
or hide mistakes.
Yeah. And do it because doing nothing or hiding it is better than the alternative of like, now I'm going to get written up. We're going to have a meeting. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that, blah, blah, blah. And people think like I always wonder at what point, like someone in upper management, like forgets what it's like to be an employee. Cause it seems like you've probably experienced this where it seems like at a certain level of management, people just like, it's like they've never had a regular job. Like they've always been a manager or something. And it's like, how did you like, do you have no idea how humans work? When did you lose that? Because I just like don't understand how your brain is working right now. It's like, oh, we'll just do this, that, and this, and we'll just make people do that, and then we'll be fine. And it's like, but why would they? Like,
right.
But they weren't doing the other thing. And so why would they do this new thing that you're proposing out of nowhere that is mostly just a punishment for them? Like, where are you getting that from?
Yeah. So I've talked about this guy 3 or 4 times on the podcast, Nicholas Means. Have you seen his talks?
No.
So I'll put them in the show notes again. If you have not seen them, I think he's just like a total aerospace nerd. And like, so he's got a bunch on planes and stuff like that and how to build good teams. And a lot of them are all centered around not tragedies, but catastrophes. So like the one that I'm thinking of in this is about blameless postmortems, and it's about the 3 Mile Island disaster. And so he goes into, here's how the disaster happened. You know, how could these people miss it? Blah, blah, blah. And they did this entire giant study on this and report that it turned out that like there were so many extenuating circumstances outside of what face value would have caused this. You know, like you look at the data, the rough data, and you're like, how did these people not see that this reactor was melting down? And then you find out like all of these other things, like, oh, everybody in the control room was in the nuclear navy, and so the warning sign that they should have been looking at is never a problem on a sub. So they're not looking for that one; they're looking for something completely different. And so I'll put the video in the link. Definitely send it to you. You got to watch it. All of his talks are amazing. Like he's got one on Skunk Works. He's got one on that big DC-10 crash in the 70s or 80s, and like how those 3 pilots, you know, I think they still lost a quarter of the people on board, but could have been 100% of them. And
shit.
They are some of the best talks. Like he does them at developer conferences because I think he worked at a few different tech companies, but probably the best like talks on building teams and blameless postmortems and all of that I've ever seen. Like just so they're like 30 or 45 minutes and they just go by it in a blink of an eye. And so I'll definitely put them in the show notes.
So when you say blameless postmortem, is that in like a positive or a negative way? That like that is an acceptable outcome or that is an unacceptable outcome?
It is,
or just an outcome.
It is just, this is what happened. Here is the fact finding that led. This is how this happened. That's all it is.
I see. I see.
Like, this person did anything wrong. It's like this person did this, and then this happened, and then this happened, and here's what we can learn from it. And like,
so it's an objective look at the facts. That's not like skewed towards like pointing the finger at people. Gotcha.
Yeah. And because this was such a big meltdown and on U.S. soil, like they basically did this at a governmental level, which very rarely happens. And so it's like such a really interesting way to look at problems. And I think that extreme ownership kind of goes hand in hand with that. Like extreme ownership is the opposite side of that coin, where if everybody takes ownership, we can get past the blame stuff real quick and do these postmortems and kind of figure out what the hell went wrong and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, which is sometimes it's sometimes that's tough. Like, especially when you're down in the dumps, you really want to find a cause. So, like, there's like mentally, you're like, it's not me. Something else is fucking this up for me and I need it. But it truly, and like when your brain is like that, it seems like the right thing to do. Like, I just need there's something external happening here that is causing all of my issues. And that's never the case, almost ever. And if you just own it and speak it into existence, it's just so much easier to move past and like fix your problems if you own your problems, as opposed to like, I mean, it's so stressful to try like the thought of like hiding or lying is just, and not just taking ownership of it and moving on. It's such a stressful situation. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And like, just doesn't help anybody, you know, like, and like you said, it just makes you miserable. Like it really, like you can get so down that rabbit hole of like hating everyone and just bitching and moaning about everything. And it's just so toxic that once you change your mindset and you're like, this is the situation, I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to be disciplined and just kick ass and we'll see where this goes. And like, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that it's easy, like by far.
It's really hard. Like, I mean, discipline is tough. And like, I don't know. I'm on episode, because I'm going through the whole backlog of Within Tolerance. I just started listening to it when Melissa was on.
Right.
And then I'm up through like episode 120 or something right now. And there's just like there's a section right now with like, I think it's Josh Ogle and Henry Holsters are on. And there's both of those and maybe one other one, maybe Adam, that like there was like a couple in a row that all kind of ended up dealing with discipline, like, and being like disciplined as an owner. It was right as you came, like right around your transition to full time, and how that's been and how that was like affecting your mind and things, because you have a set schedule when you go to a job every day, but now you are setting your own schedule and things like that. And it's so easy like to just be like, I guess I could just leave the shop and stuff. Or like for me right now, my discipline issues are mostly around just like health, you know? I just like don't do anything. I've been trying to be better about it, but it's like, oh, I can be healthy later, which is so silly because it just doesn't do anything. Like sleep, I don't need to sleep. I don't need to wake up early, or I don't need to do this. I don't need to be healthy. That's been a big focus. That's why I say like that's the part that like hit me the hardest, because it's like I've just been like so flat out that I've been essentially just like a working robot trying to like keep going, but like trying to like build some routine into my life so that it makes working easier and my whole life easier is fucking rough.
Yeah, that's another dichotomy where you're like, I don't have time to work out or like, walk or whatever. But by not making that time, you make yourself sick or unhealthy, which makes you less productive. So then you definitely don't have the time. And it's this like self-reinforcing cycle.
Yeah.
It's really tough. Like I feel like I go up and down at like a roller coaster of like, okay, I'm going to work out every day and like do this. And then like, a week or two will come by where I'm like at the shop super late and I'm like, oh, I don't have time. And dude, it's tough. It really is tough.
Yeah. The way I just like, I carry around like resistance bands, and that's what I've been starting. And then like, just like nothing's happening, just like bust out the resistance bands and do like something. Or I'm in like a massive shop. This shop is probably like, I don't know, 200,000 square feet or something. And I'm just like, because they do aerospace composites. So these things are huge. Some of these parts are fucking huge. Like they do the booms. This place does the booms for in-flight refueling. Those things are fucking long.
Yeah.
They don't look so long in videos,
Right.
Like it looks tiny, but like,
well, yeah, when you have a jet as a scale object, you're like, everything's small, and then you see it, I'm sure it's giant.
Yeah, they're fucking huge. But I've just been walking around this place, getting my steps in, trying to do anything, and like, I don't know, it's just always little things so stupid, like going to get a burger from like In-N-Out. I guess I'll just skip fries, something silly, but it's just little baby. Think about this, because like every time I've tried to do it outside of college, where like college is like very just regimented for the most part, it's been really difficult because I just ramp too hard, and then you fall off because it's like I'm gonna really do it, and then it's like, no, you're not. Come on, like just baby steps, make it a habit, do that whole thing.
I saw some video of I think he was a personal trainer or something, and he said that the hardest part of like working out consistently is the routine. Mm-hmm. So he said that when he started with people that didn't have any history of working out, he would just tell them, go to the gym every day and do one set of anything, like walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes, do 5 minutes of anything, and then leave. And he's like, do that for the first 2 weeks to a month, and like that will pattern your brain of like, oh, this is what I do every day. This is what I do every other day, whatever it is. And he said that he found so much more success with his clients when they did that first, because it created that routine. And then from that on, it was like, oh, well, now I'm already here. Like I might as well work out,
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought of something that I was going to ask, because like eventually you're going to hire somebody, right? There's this like, it's just kind of what probably you're going, the road you're going towards going down.
Yeah.
What like reading this book and like thinking about extreme ownership, like what are you looking for in somebody in an interview? And like, what would you ask somebody that's going to like let you know that their mindset is correct for your company.
I think that one of them I would steal from Jamie for sure is, what did you fuck up and how did you fix it?
Yeah.
Because I think that, I think I've said it before. I don't care what they know currently. Like, I can train them up to be where I need them to be, but I need somebody who's not going to be shy to make mistakes. Like, I think that that's the kind of environment I learned in, and it was so valuable to me that I couldn't not do that for somebody else,
Yeah.
So I think talking a lot about mistakes and how they've made them and how they've made them better, I think that that's a big deal to me is really ownership. Going back to the book, ownership of screwing up and how to make yourself better and how to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
What have you asked employees about? Well, I mean, I guess a lot of your employees have just been friends, so you kind of have worked with them.
All of them have been friends. So I haven't really had to interview anybody because I had worked with them. And I mean, I whiffed on one, even though like I probably should have known, and I might have had goggles on because I was just like, oh, I really want to get into automation. And like, that's that kind of goes back to one of these bad boys is like probably prioritize and execute is like, I went out on a limb and hired that guy, like really, really risky. And it just didn't pay off overall. Like, didn't really have the work, didn't really have the money, and just kind of was like, I think I could figure it out, and I couldn't figure it out. But the things that, like mistakes, like the mistakes one is one that I look for. And especially now looking back, it's like, I really hate, like, this is a weird one, but like when people are like, I know things, like, ooh, that's a weird one. That's a like kind of like a red flag, because like it's like if you know how to do everything, like then there's a weird problem with when you know things is that you actually probably don't, and so you have really just built a box around what your idea is of everything, and that's all you're gonna do because you quote unquote fucking know it, and so it's like nope, that doesn't exist, and it's like doesn't it? It's like, can't do that. And it's like, why? And so you end up, and like, I guess like really the one is like when people speak in absolutes, oh brother, that one really fucks me up.
I like that. Yeah. That's a really good idea. And I think that hand in hand with that, I would probably ask about self-improvement, like what kind of activities they do. Do they listen to podcasts? Do they watch YouTube videos? Like, how do they continue learning?
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure how I would structure it, but like I would love to provide incentives for continued learning in our company.
Sure. Yeah. That is an interesting one. Yeah, I don't know exactly how you build that in. And I guess kind of like leading up and down the chain, whoever you bring in, do they become part of decision-making process for the business going forward? Or is that mostly going to be handled between you and Brad? Or like, how many employees do you start to like separate who's making decisions for things? And I guess, have you thought about that? Probably not. But,
no,
but
it seems so far off.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I would love to say like, oh yeah, we're always going to be like this collaborative nature. But like at some point, you get big enough that there will be decision makers and then others. But I don't know. I feel like if it's something that affects the company, it would be nice to have some kind of company forum and just, like, this is what we're thinking of doing. If there's any thoughts that you'd like to get off your chest about it, we'll hear them now. Not that like, not a vote, but like, hey, this is a change that we're looking at doing. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, because like, and I guess that's the leading up and down the chain, right? Which is like trying to, I described it to somebody recently as like a temporal pincer move, if you've ever seen Tenet, which is like going from top to bottom and like forward, like thinking forwards and backwards. Because like that's something I think is really important, and a lot of companies just don't do in general, is like, and they kind of cover this in the book, which is you have a lot of assholes that make decisions in an ivory tower, and they're like, this is what we're doing. Or I had a boss who would get us all into a room and be like, what do you guys think? And it's like, what do you guys think about this idea? And it's like, that's a bad one for these reasons. And he's like, okay, cool. And then he would go into a room and decide that we were doing his thing, the question. It was mostly looking for like, he was hoping we would approve it. And then 2 months later, like a lot of the time after whatever was happening wasn't working, he would be like, guys, I fucking got the idea. And it was like the stuff that we initially would talk to him about. And he's like, and that makes, it's like, if this is a very interesting thing that's based on mindset too, which is if you are generally happy, your boss doing what you suggested and going with your plan is fine, no matter how you get there, because it is a positive change. And you're like, cool. So we are heading in the right direction, even though, and he needed to see that whatever was he suggested was dumb, and like he needed the proof that it was bad. But the flip side of that is, if you are in a bad mindset, when your boss does that, you're just like, fuck this guy, fuck this company.
You got what you deserve
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, like, I think the hardest part of doing something like that too is going to be creating a culture where my employees feel like they actually do have the voice to say, like, that's a stupid fucking plan. And like, like that's so hard. Cause like, I mean, I've had bosses that say like, oh yeah, I'm open to criticism, but like, you never want to do that. And so I don't know how to appropriately like broach that or like say that. And I don't know if that is just like, as a boss, having extremely strict, extreme ownership of like your mistakes and like making sure people know when you make mistakes and that you're fixing them. And so that they know that you're not, infallible, and also that you recognize when you've made mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is tough. And that is like, like they put in the book, they bring that up a bunch, or that one's the salesman, where the CEO was making decisions and like had a really good plan, but like didn't articulate it. Is so fascinating, because it's hard to communicate that. Because even like, I mean, how many times have you dealt with somebody where they're like, oh, I'm super open to criticism, and you're like, okay, cool, and like suggestions, and then you start suggesting things and it's just like immediately defensive, and you're like, okay, so are you not open to criticism? Like, or what's happening here? I don't understand. Like, why are you upset with me all of a sudden?
Right. Well, and I think it's hard on the employee side, because there's a fine line between sharing criticism and then becoming argumentative.
Yeah.
And like one of them is like, I don't agree with this. And it's like, cool, but we're going to do it. But then when they're like, well, you're wrong, like, and keep harping on it, then it's like, okay, that part is unacceptable. Like, I get it. I've heard you voiced your opinion. I understand. Here are the reasons why we're still doing it, Yeah. And like, I don't want to hear any more like dissension. Like, there's a difference between like dissension and criticism, I think.
Yeah. When like, oh man, when I was an employee, so outrageously aggressive with my bosses. And just like very forthcoming, which has like, for the most part, I found is like well received, depending on, because like if your boss doesn't take it well, probably they suck, like to a certain level. I guess like it does depend on like if you're just going back, like if you're just like literally shit talking every single thing that they do without understanding. But there are like, I mean, I kind of usurped a couple people in my day, but like I'm thinking back to like methods days where there was a lot of policies in place that I just didn't like, that I thought were dumb and that slowed us down. And like, I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And then like come to find out like, oh, the rule behind that is it has to do with Homeland Security showing up and being like, hey, if you guys don't like tighten up your dock control, like you can't do any of this work ever again. And it's like, got it. I don't understand why people don't lead with that, because that's a pretty good reason to like to really want to be locked down. But sure, instead of like threatening to fire people over doing something that seems arbitrary,
poor leading up and down the chain, and that's poor making people believe. Like that's just you need to know why for something like that. Like if it seems so dumb and enough people are doing it that they're threatening to fire people, like they need to do a better job.
You need to relax. Let's go.
Side tangent, going back to employees, I had said last time that I would love to hire from my local community college.
Yeah.
You see that post that went to Pima's new building?
Dude, I did. It looks
holy crap.
Rad.
It is so insane. So like I went there, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago now. Shit, time's crazy. And they were like hole in the wall classrooms. Like the programming room was like 0 windows, tiny little room. I think there's like 12 desks in there, and that was all that could be in that class, or maybe 15 desks plus like the instructor. And it is insane. Like they have one entire wing on the bottom floor for machining. Then they have an entire wing for welding, and then the second floor I think is all CAD CAM and robotics, or not CAD CAM, CAD and robotics.
Cool.
Then the third floor has an entire business development center where they're going to be able to rent out like offices and have conference rooms you can use and advisors and all of that.
It's awesome.
Oh my goodness, it was so cool. They bought like a ton of Mark Forge printers, including the metal ones. They're going to have ovens to do the sintering with the Mark Forge stuff. They bought DMG equipment 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
To replace some, or not to replace, but in addition to the Haas machines they have.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they're going to be adding a little bit more machinery, but man, it is just so nice. Like, oh, and they also bought CMMs. So now they're actually going to have like a full inspection program. So both Brad and I were like, oh, cool.
Shit.
Whatever CMM we end up buying, like they're going to have a Zeiss, a Hexagon, and then one other one that's going to be running Nikon CMM Manager. Like no matter what we get. Something? Might have been in Ames, yeah. So whatever we end up with, we will be able to go there for classes.
That is awesome. That's so fucking cool.
And they're planning on starting to teach out of it this fall. Like it was so soon. Like the building's basically done. Yeah, when we were there, they were like painting and like covering up lights and stuff so they could do the finished painting. But so cool. Oh, and on the third floor, there is a giant 10-ton crane that runs the length of the building so they can pick stuff up off of one street and then distribute it through the entire building, like drop printers off on the second floor with this thing. And like,
holy shit,
so cool. So
that is
cool.
Insane. You should go teach a class there in your free time so you can recruit.
Yeah, I would be totally open to it, to like adjunct 1 or 2 classes or whatever. But yeah, just so cool. Like I was so pumped. If anybody is in the Tucson area and looking for something to do, like, skill learning and stuff, definitely highly recommend Pima. Like I already love the instructors, and now they really have the backing to really execute on all this.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I didn't even know. So like Pima also has a automotive program where you can learn to be a mechanic basically, and all the diagnosis stuff. They have a giant new building that apparently has been around since June or July of last year or something like that. Like not as big, but maybe as big as like the bottom 2 or the bottom floor of the new manufacturing building.
Oh shit.
And it's like sponsored by Ford or something. I was like, oh, okay, cool. This place is like significantly better than when I went here.
That's what you love to see. Like, oh cool, it's a real program now.
I mean, I learned a lot, but like we went into the old shop and it is so crammed in there now compared to where they're going to be. It's just, I'm pumped for everyone that will be going through that program soon.
Nice. Yeah, you could just start doing internships or whatever. Do they do like co-ops there? No, probably not. Or
I don't think so. But yeah, like you said, I'd love to have when we start looking to hire, I'd love to have an intern from there or just an employee from there. Like I found the reason I excelled so quickly in my studies there was because I was working at the same time in a shop. Like it's a 2-year program. My last full year that I was there, I was working in a shop the entire time too. And it was like, okay, so I go to work, I apply what I learned at school, I come back with questions from work of things we didn't cover. They answer those. Like it just, reinforced and built and built and built.
That's sick. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm really pumped for them. Like if they have a NLX 2500 twin spindle lathe with live tooling and all that.
That's the single turret.
Yeah, single turret. Yeah. So if they've been talking about for years doing a advanced lathe class, and if they end up doing that, I'll probably go back and take that as well, because that would be a ton of fun. I think that one's. I know that the DMG machines they bought, there was one Fanuc, which I think is the CMX 1100. They have a DMU 50 that's Siemens, and then I think the NLX is a Mitsubishi control with whatever maps or I think is over the top of it.
The Silos, probably.
That's what it is, Silos, not maps.
Yeah. Maps is the old overlay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 2016.
Yeah. So if they do that, I'd love to go back for that as well. But either way, like if we get a Hexagon CMM, we'll send Brad to take the class. And if we get a Zeiss, we'll both go and take the class and learn more about that. I mean, obviously we'll take the training through Zeiss as well, but to have something locally that we can go back and kind of slowly hone our skills on will be awesome too.
I'd be like, hey, I got some parts. I got some practical examples over here. Let's give this a whirl.
Yeah, totally. Oh, so speaking of CMMs too, I told you last time that I was like dead set on Zeiss.
Yeah.
It was like no way considering Hexagon, but so the Hexagon salesman around here is fantastic. Like he was the highlight of using a Hexagon CMM at my last job. I think he used to do contract programming on Hexagon machinery. And so he actually like knows what he's doing. He's not just like a talking head sales guy. And so like I could go to him with complicated questions in addition to like, oh, get us a quote for a machine.
Nice.
But so he came by the shop, he texted me one morning, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and was just like, hey, I'm in town. Can I come by? Came by, dropped off donuts, was just like, hey, just wanted to say hi. Like, I know you guys aren't buying a CMM right now. Just wanted to say hi. And I told him, I was like, listen, dude, I think I'm probably going to end up with a Zeiss. Like, I hate to say that because I love working with you. And he's like, just give us a shot. Like, he's like, I'm not going to bad talk Zeiss. They make great machinery. Their software is good. But just give us a shot. I think you'll find us pretty competitive. And I realized at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for me. Like I can use PCDMS. I've used it for 5 years. It really matters if Brad feels like he can pick it up. And so we're going to give them a shot. We're going to go up to both Zeiss and Hexagon, bring them probably the same part and print and be like, program this. How fast can you get this ready? Like, don't give it to them in advance, but give it to them day of. Be like, we're here, program it.
Yeah.
And just like have Brad look at both of them and be like, this one is the one that I feel like I can learn.
Okay. Nice. Who sells Zeiss and Hexagon there?
This is Hexagon TQS, Total Quality Systems.
Yeah.
They sell Zeiss. And so far, if he's listening, you got another chance. Feel free to contact me. But like it has not been a great communication so far. Like I asked him what I thought was a very simple ask. I was like, hey, before I buy this CMM, I want to pay for your guys' class, your level 1 certification, or not certification, level 1 training, which is like $2,000. And all I'm asking is that if I end up buying a Zeiss CMM, you roll that back off the price because it comes with it. And like has been a string of emails of like, oh, well, I got to ask Zeiss. And like, oh, well, they haven't gotten back to me. I'm like, you're telling me you don't have $2,000 worth of wiggle room and in these things that you can just take off? Like, I call bullshit. Like, there's no way.
I think Methods also sells Zeiss. You'd probably still.
I went through Zeiss's website and asked for information on a couple CMMs, and TQS was the one that they referred me to.
Gotcha.
But it was like, I don't know. Does that seem like such a wild ask of like, hey, I don't want to drop 60, 70 grand on a machine I don't like. All I want to do is pay. I'm paying $2,000 out of pocket to take your class. Yeah. And if I like it, I just want you to roll that back off the price.
No, it seems pretty reasonable. I feel like a lot of places would do you that solid.
I would think so.
You would think like it's not that crazy. It's not that crazy of a request.
No, when I'm spending $80,000 to $100,000 on something, I don't, I feel like spending $2,000 is kind of a low bar to entry. Like if I don't like it, I'd much rather spend $2,000 than $100,000 and like walk away from the whole thing being like, well, I know the competition now. I know what it does. I guess I'm going with, an Ames, or I'm going with Hexagon or something. I'm going with the devil I know. There's
a guy on the East Coast. I'll put you in contact with him because all he does, the company does like contract CMM work essentially. And they have Zeiss, Hexagon, and Ames. They do all three. And he has a pretty good he has a really good idea of the comparisons between them and like what he likes and what he doesn't like about all of them.
Okay.
Cool guy.
I appreciate that because I think I said it on the Alex and Mickey episode, but like I told the Hexagon guy, like I want something that is just very quick to program. Like we make 1 or 2 parts. I can't spend more time programming my CMM than I do machining the part or like programming the part, So, and he was like, I don't know if that exists, and I got the impression that like none of them are really well templated for things like that. So
cool.
I don't know. Well, yeah, exactly. I was like, great. So this sucks. And like, there are softwares like Power Inspect out there, but then, okay, that's a $15,000-$20,000 license on top of a $80,000 to $100,000 machine. So I can use it better. And, at scale, that might make more sense. But for our first CMM, I'm not sure that I can really justify that right off the bat.
Yeah, it seems that might be a bit of a stretch right away. Too much growth. Like you talk like leveraging yourself to the nines.
Yeah. And if I'm gonna leverage myself anymore right now, it's probably gonna be for a 5-axis over a CMM.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I think you should do it. Pull the
trigger. It needs to happen. We need to figure out a way to do it. So it'll happen.
You just put the order in.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. I'll just go ahead and add it to cart tonight.
Yeah. Just click buy, go to Amazon, be like 5-axis machines.
Right. Yeah.
Just hover over, show up tomorrow.
It sounds good to me. Yeah. I'll get right on that.
Yeah, you could especially if it's going to take a while, you could do some, I know methods. I know you're not looking at any method stuff, but like if the delivery was taking like months, they would allow you to like put the order in and then not put any money down until like a month before it was going to ship from the factory. So you could like they weren't hanging your ass out there because they had poor logistics and stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I have done zero earnest looking into all this stuff. Like it's been lots of like touching base with people, meeting people, but nothing like, hey, can I get a quote?
Is that Seb in the background there?
Yeah,
Seb.
He's right there.
Yeah. It's got to be Hermela. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it probably is. I mean, we're going to Germany, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
So I don't know. We haven't committed to anything. Like I said, I haven't gotten a quote on anything, but it'll be really cool to see where a potential machine we might buy is made and really get to dive in with them. Like I think they have 20 something machine demos while we're there. And so I'm really planning on either there if I can, or when we get back, sitting down with my regional sales manager and kind of laying out like, okay, these are the options I want. Which ones can I put off till later? Because like I know you can get automation prep. I know, I would love to get like the whole thing and the pallet changer and everything all at once, but I don't think we're going to do that right off the bat.
The fucking cost difference. But like, I've just been going through this exercise of like finding 5-axis machines for like a company as one of our consulting deals. Probably like the only thing we've ever like straight consulted on. And the price of the Hermela C250 with like base model to like optioned out with the HS Flex is nuts, because it's like, oh yeah, that's under $300,000. That's pretty good. And then it's like you start putting all this stuff on it, and it's like $650,000. How did we get there?
Yeah,
like, but I mean,
it's tough.
I will say, like, the people that I like, I mean, I'm sure Jamie could speak to it too. Like, and he did. Like, it's a fucking good machine. They make good machines, and we have a project on a C400 right now, and it's my guy's like first Heidenhain. And we got Camplete for it just because we use Mastercam, and that's nice. And dude, like, thing fucking rips. No issues.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Honestly, it ticks all the boxes. And like I've said before on the show, the service from everyone I've talked to who has one just seems unparalleled, like in the world of 5-axis.
So do you deal with so I do have a question, because like my guy is dealing with north-south machinery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would be our reseller as well.
Yeah. So would they be doing your service, or just Hermela?
It's all direct.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was very confused at first. I was like, how the fuck did these guys get Hermela? But they're just selling them. They're not actually doing anything else with them. So like app support is all Hermela, and same thing with service and installation. That makes a lot more sense, because like they're a very young company to the chip side of things.
Yeah. Well, North-South only got the Hermela brand, at least in Arizona, last year.
Like
a month or two before IMCS.
Never heard of those guys before.
I hadn't either. and they came by unannounced to the shop, and it was one of the few times that I've been okay with those guys coming by, like just random salesmen dropping by, because our two guys are Logan and Brian, and they are fantastic. Like, we hung out with them a bunch at IMTS. We went to dinner with them. They are like, every interaction we've had has been a ton of fun with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not, like I said, I haven't made any commitments to anything, but a C250 really seems like it checks all the boxes right now.
That's sick. I mean, it's hard to go wrong, you know? It's 30 tools or something. So you get more tools. You can get up to 88, I think, on that bad boy.
But after the stock tools, I think it's basically $1,000 a tool to add on, because you can either get, I want to say it's like either I want to say you can get up to like 120 extra tools, because you can get a 50 and an 80 tool mag, and I believe they stack, or like they'll go next to each other and pass between. Yeah, maybe somebody, I'm sure, can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, they're basically $1,000 a tool, so either 50 or 80 grand, from what I've heard at least. Again, have not gotten a quote, so don't quote me on this, because I have not gotten a quote.
Yeah, I'm looking at my spreadsheet right now. So do I have the C250? Yeah, C250 base 330, and then with the HS Flex and 88 tools and 12 pallets, it's 650.
Yeah, and we probably wouldn't get, even when we got an HS Flex, we probably wouldn't get all 12 pallets right off the bat, because you can get like certain levels of, you don't have to stock all 12, and you don't have to get both sides of the HS Flex filled.
Yeah, you can get like one shelf or whatever they call it, one rack.
Yeah. Who knows? By the time we're there, maybe we will get everything just balls to the wall and add a tool tower at the same time and call it a day. But
you just start balling out. I could see
it. I hope so, but I think we'll probably just get a base C250 with automation prep and the systems table, and that's probably it. I don't really know of any other options besides adding on tool towers and the automation. So
it's a good machine. I mean, I think you'll be happy. I like we were texting, and it's like, I can just imagine what that would do for your business, like almost instantly. Just like, oh, hey, we can do 5-axis now. It's like, here's all this work. Or like the flip side of that is like, oh, this part that was going to be a couple ops and like a fixture is now like, snap that fucker off. Nice. Right. We're done.
Oh man, I had 2 or 3 parts in the last 2 weeks that were all able to be zipped off with the key seat cutter that I had to use on the part anyway. They were all very tiny, and it was just such a good feeling to be like, oh, that's done. Like, I know everything's good. It's already done. And like, it was on a 3-axis, but like, I can't imagine on a 5-axis, like, oh, this complicated part is just done. Like, I'm ready to go.
It's so cool. Did I send you the picture of the medical titanium parts that I did? I'll send you that. It's a video of the tab. It's like this tall and like completely surfaced, and we snapped it off. It's pretty sketchy, but it was pretty cool.
If it worked.
Yeah. If it works, it works. Fucking dude. I was having a big discussion recently about like just like quality of machines, I guess. Or it's like, it's so fascinating. Like, you go into shops and like every one of their shops is like super fucking baller and everything. And like, yeah, I had some friends over and I made them dinner or whatever. And we were talking about like, oh, like the interesting thing about Haas, because I made that titanium part on a UMC 750, is that like, it's cheap, it's not like the best machine in the world, but the fascinating thing about Haas's like high speed machining and everything is like, salesmen will have you believe that like, oh, this Doosan will rip that Haas apart. This blah, blah, blah will rip that Haas apart. Like, pick any like basic FANUC controlled machine that's like a vertical, and it's like, oh, it's so much faster. And like, I almost guarantee if you didn't spend like $15,000 in options, that like the Haas will be faster in tricotal machining. Like, and I've seen it personally. Like, and I was like, there's no fucking way. But there is fucking way. They just have it nailed down. And then you get into like, oh, like the table's lighter, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, on one of them, it was like a horizontal. It was like a really high end horizontal versus a VF4SS, and the VF4SS was twice as fast. like
so
base.
that's only though if you buy the high-speed machining option from Haas, which still bugs the shit out of me that is an option.
But you get it with, I mean, technically, I mean, it's like to get Fanix up to like real high speed, you need to buy some options too, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know about brother or anything, but like this dude was like, he was pretty bent out of shape, which makes sense because like obviously a salesman's going to be like, dude, this machine's fast. And like it is fucking rip roaring fast, but like when you put them head to head and like it is a better machine, but it's like you said it was going to be faster than my Haas. It's not faster than my Haas. And like you kind of get into these discussions where it's like, oh, can my machine can push 5 times faster than yours? And it's like, but your machine costs 3 times more than mine. I could have 3 spindles to your 1. So you could push 5 times faster, but my 3 spindles are going to produce more parts. Guarantee it, you know? And it's just so fascinating, like depending on like how you're building your system. And you get like doing aerospace, I have to be on this, I have to be on that. Like the amount of shops I've seen like that, and like me personally and my guys and a couple of my buddies, the shit that you can make on a Haas if you're like careful, which is like the thing, you got to be careful, like and probe and do whatever. It's like pretty fucking fascinating.
Oh yeah.
And very interesting. And it's like, and when you go into like super high end shops, edit this out, Hadrian. You go into these super high end shops where it's like all the machines are like really fucking expensive, but they're still like probing everything and doing all this junk that you would do on like a low end machine. It's like, was it worth it to have this machine? Like you could have filled this place with like literally 4 times the pieces of equipment, even if you didn't go Haas, if you went with like something like a Methods MB650U, which you can get into for like $250,000-$300,000 or something, which is still, it's got Heidenhain scales and a Fanuc 31i, or like the DVF 5000 or blah blah blah. Pick low end 5-axis machine and plug it in there. It's, I don't know, it's kind of a tangent.
It just depends on the kind of shop you're building, like you said. Like I think, I was just talking to somebody about this week that like, for me, for a prototype shop, like, yeah, I could have bought a Haas, but I think that it makes my job easier having more, I'd argue they're more accurate usually, but like the higher end machines I've bought make my job easier, but really my customer is never going to know the difference because like it all comes down, for me, for a prototype shop, it comes down to quality, communication, and like just giving a shit about things, like making my packaging nice, making things like that. Like my Haas parts still wouldn't have left my shop if they weren't up to my standards, you know? Like my customer has no idea. So really it comes down to like quality of life for me. It's like, oh, it's a lot easier for me to make nicer parts on something I know is going to be pretty damn accurate all day.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it really comes down to, you know, if you're making stuff that's plus or minus 10 or plus or minus 20 all day, like, yeah, you probably are fine with a Haas. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like the biggest one that I have is like at the time with X2 Development Group, when we were talking about buying equipment to build the guns, the receivers, uppers and lowers, like we wanted, like from a want perspective, Matsuras, you know, that was like, that's what we were like, it's like, gosh, this is good. They'd like, we wouldn't have to worry as much, blah, blah, blah. But then it comes down to it, and like we got 4 UMC, like, and it's I mean, dude, receivers. I mean, if you're a gun guy at all, you know, like anything that's accurate on it is a hole, and it's reamed, and then it's positionally accurate to like a couple thou. It's like fine, you know, it doesn't matter that much. So it's like when you start to get into it, it's like we got 4 UMC 500s with like basically every fucking option you could buy, and all of them automated with those rapid design solutions automation packages. Like, so they all had 30 pallets. One of them had 24 because of the height, for $1.2 million. And it's like, that is 1.5 MAM 7235 piece, you know, or like two. And that's like completely tooled up too. That's not just like, that's like perfectly tooled. And it's like, it is the tool for the job, you know?
Right.
Like,
oh yeah. 100%.
And that's, yeah, because I mean, I bought a machine. I didn't buy a Haas, you know. I bought a Matsura. I mean, it's used and it's starting to get fixed finally.
Oh, it is awesome.
Yeah. I've been pressing, and like it's always good to me because I'm good to them. Like we help each other out. So like we've worked something out, especially like one of these projects I'm working on is with Cellway, at least like full build automation things. And it would be like, I would need that machine to build things for that project. So it's like, so let's fucking get this thing going.
Right. Yeah. Scratch my back so I can scratch your back.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but exactly. It's the right tool for the job. Like it's all about knowing your end goal and just pursuing that relentlessly.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. Oh, brother.
Oh, brother. Well,
yeah.
Maybe we should tackle the last two questions then that I ask every guest every week. What's been popping up your browser, man? What have you been researching?
Honestly, like nothing. This week has mostly just been like, I haven't really looked into anything this week, which is kind of weird, but like I guess that's not true. In terms of browser, mostly like all of my research has been kind of inward, into my own company, and just kind of like getting my ducks in a row and trying to like, because at some point I'm going to take a break this year, probably August. I'm planning to like, that's my goal, is to go to the UK. Oh, here we go. This is one thing that it wasn't this week. It was probably last week, but like, I want to go to the UK for a month and not work, or at least do very little work. I want to get my throat tattooed. And so the tattoo thing is taken care of. I got guys over there. But the thing that I was looking at was like, I want to go to like the middle of fucking nowhere and just like be in like a cottage. Like, especially because like I couldn't burden my cousin and his wife. Okay, I'm coming for a month. Put me up. But no, I was looking into cottage rentals in the UK, and I found some like pretty tight ones that are like less than $100 a night, like in some pretty cool little areas. Nice. So like it's still a lot of money, obviously. Like that'd be like $3,000, and you got to get out there and blah blah blah. But like the plan is to be like in a cash positive position to be able to do that. So August is the move, but that's mostly what I've been researching. And so as a result of that is like, if I have that goal, then I research inward. And it's like, what needs to take place to make that happen? Oh, and I guess JTech, I've been talking to JTech a lot recently, because one of the projects we're doing would be on a JTech machine. If you haven't heard of it, and there's a likelihood that you haven't, it's an AMS machine that JTech imports. And so if you're at IMTS, there was a line of like these little, like they're super fucking ugly machines, but they're made in India, and they're kind of built like brick shit houses. Like they have like a little 5-axis machine that can do like a 600 millimeter diameter workpiece, has a Heidenhain control on it and stuff, and it's like around $300,000, and it's like, fuck. And they're like the biggest machine tool company in India. They make like 20,000 machines a year or something like that. Wow. They have their shit, they're dialed in. And I was talking to one of the owners of Selway who just went there, and he was like, that's one of the nicest factories I've ever been in. And I'm like, fuck, like pretty pumped about that. I'm actually waiting on more information for one of the 5-axis machines, because like, not for me personally, just like for a project. It's because people get really attached to the Heidenhain control once they use it, because it's pretty fucking killer. I'm really pumped about that one. So that's what I've been researching.
That's killer.
Yeah.
Let's see. I ended up buying the AMS, the automated material system. I think that's what it stands for my bamboo printer.
Okay.
I had like,
is that the thing up top that sits on top?
Yeah. So I bought mine without it. And I've told people that I bought it without it, because I was like, I don't need, multiple colors. Like I'm just making brackets and stuff. But I realized
support material,
and I hate changing out filaments, because like I'll print in PETG and then PLA.
Yeah.
And recently I had issues where I thought my bamboo was like having vibrational issues, but I was printing with aftermarket PLA, and just swapping back to the bamboo stuff fixed all my issues. Or like, shit. Oh yeah, their stuff's just not as good. Like you can't run it at the same speed as our stuff. I was like, oh yeah, I should have realized that. Yeah. So I was like, I was ordering filament, and I was like, I should probably just get this. Like I print so much as it is, you can set up redundant rolls and just say like, well, when this runs out, use this one. And so I just picked it up. I was like, all right, screw it. And so that's supposed to be delivered end of this month since it's now April.
Nice.
And then otherwise, like just business stuff, like we keep adding more and more templates to the system. We're using a ton of those Moldinos and Dixie thread whirlers now instead of taps. Like that has been such a night and day change for Brad and I. Like there's just like zero hesitancy. There's almost zero setup because we have those hydraulic holders and you just run them. Like I've got templates in Fusion for any of the threads now that I've used and drop it in, pick my holes, it's done. And like I know like the Moldinos make a good thread with either a 0 or like 1/10 of negative wear almost in every material. Like H900 17.4, sure. 316, sure. Aluminum, sure. And it just like keeps going. It's like, this is so awesome.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
So we've been working on that a lot. And yeah, it seems like it's been working. Like we've been really kicking ass and like getting workout. It just feels great.
Sick. It's the best feeling in the world.
I did have a rough, this week was good, but it was a little rough because I was making these 303 parts and like normally 303 is relatively dimensionally stable.
Yeah.
And these parts were like pretty thin and kind of a lot of material removal and they were warping on me like crazy. And like technically, according to the print, they were in tolerance despite them bananing 5/6 thou.
Okay.
But I ended up just making like the executive decision of like, no, I'm just going to buy the material and remake these. I can make them in 3 ops instead of 2. And I know they're going to be dead flat. And I was, it was one of those things where I made the first 2 and then I was going to go on the next day to make the next 2. And I was toiling over it all night, just back and forth in my head of like, well, it's technically correct, but I don't really like it. Finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do the whole point of Protium is to do the right thing. Make amazing parts that people are happy to receive. And so that's what we ended up doing.
Tight. It's awesome.
It was actually kind of interesting though. So these parts were kind of U-shaped. And so they just barely fit in a 2.5-inch blank, but I made them at a 3-inch blank because I realized, so the distance between the tines was tightly controlled. Like it was probably the tightest tolerance on the part. And if I did them out of 2.5-inch blanks after roughing and semi-finishing in the first op and then roughing and finishing in the second op, the tines would actually bow in towards each other. Whereas if I did it out of 3-inch stock and took off 1/2 inch, just like stood the plates up and took off 1/2 inch and then put that side away from the tines, like it was on the back jaw, zero movement.
Nice.
Yeah. And I was like, oh.
There's a lot to be said for mechanical stress relief.
Yeah. Yeah, it was also one of those things I was like, man, I really wish I had a heat treat oven that I could just anneal these blanks and not have to worry about it,
Sure. Yeah.
So at some point, when we get the next shop, we'll start looking into having little things like that. Right now, if I had it in my shop, I would probably burn the place down because it would light something else on fire.
Yeah. Have you made any movement? Got any movement on the shop?
Dude, no. I did find one place last night. I have no idea if it's going to work for us. It has enough space. Rent is pretty good. I have no idea on the power. I have no idea if they're willing to work with us and let us put a mini split in the manufacturing space. So it's like, cool. And then I think I told you, we found one place that was like perfect. And then the landlord was like, oh no, I don't want noisy businesses.
Yeah.
And then I saw that it was still on the market like yesterday still, or like it's still on the market right now. But like I reached out 3 or 4 days ago and was like, hey, it's still there. Any chance you want to work with us? They sent me an application. They were like, well, just let us know what you want to do to remediate the noise and fill out this application. And it was like a very invasive application. And I'm like, I'm not filling out shit until we have somewhat of a deal in place. Like you don't need my social and all of this business information on the chance that you might rent me a building. Like, well, we need to talk about this more long before you get an application out of me.
Yeah, for sure.
But that place, if it worked out, would be perfect. Like it's zoned right, 2,400 square feet, one medium-sized office in one corner and the rest is warehouse, all AC. And like, I think he said it was 300 amps a 3-phase.
Yeah. You could put a Hermile in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. More research to do. I literally am on LoopNet nightly, just like, anything pop up?
Yeah.
Can I move?
Yeah. Please.
Yeah. I'm bummed because the 2 suites over from us was a double suite. So it had 200 amps, so 3-phase, and was double the space.
Yeah.
And when it started sounding like the people were going to leave there, we could have stepped in and been like, oh, we want that. but instead the mechanic next to us did. And like now he has it and he cut a hole between his wall on that one and has a triple suite basically.
Holy
and
shit.
It's so nice. Oh my goodness. It is so nice. And I'm so jealous. We go in there all the time and talk with him. I'm just like, oh, this could have been us, but we'll find someplace for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, then the other question, what have you been working on yourself this week? Business owner, personal, how have you been getting better?
I think the big one was like just kind of giving myself time to like really dive into my finances and everything. Because I have a bookkeeper, but I was noticing like some discrepancies in terms of what my QuickBooks says I owe versus what I actually owe things. And kind of just getting a better understanding of my current debt and everything and what it's going to take to pay it off. And that was pretty big. And also just generally, I've been going hog ass wild working for, I don't know, since the middle of January. I've traveled, been like on a flight at least to one different city every weekend. Like I said, I worked in California all week. Friday, I flew to Utah. This morning, I woke up at 5, drove 2.5 hours. I'm 12 hours into my work day right now. And so I'm going to make sure my machines are running after this, get the Mazak up and running, maybe change some tools, and then take off, drive 2.5 hours back home, sleep for a little bit, shower, and then do it again tomorrow. And so mostly what I'm getting at there is it worth it? And the unfortunate answer is yes. The job is making enough money that like kind of killing myself. It's every little bit helps dig us out of the hole that much faster. And like I was telling you, I was just talking about revenue numbers. We are more than we're actually 100% over where we were at last year right now. And mostly that's because the job that I was working on, I did a lot of travel last year also, but a lot of it amounted to $0. And so just being very intentional with the traveling to make sure that if I'm traveling, I'm getting something out of it. And like the other thing is with employees, I've made some bad decisions. I probably burned one guy out, and he might come back, but if he comes back, he might want to come back in a different capacity. So how can I, moving forward, go get the right amount of work? It's being more proactive instead of reactive with work and people, because every hire that I made last year was reactive to jobs that I already had. And now I have 3 big automation systems that I'm quoting that we could get all at once. That I have a buddy of mine who's contracting for me because he has a full-time job, who does the robot stuff and mechanical design. He would be helpful, but I straight up could not do that with the 2 guys, me and my other guy. And so just being more proactive and trying to lay groundwork with, I'm still going with friends for now, just because it's the devil, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And so I'm just laying some groundwork to be like, hey, like this is where we were at, especially this is where we're going to be. I know what you need. I know what I need. And like having these conversations, that's like, especially him, because I hired a guy he's also my customer right now. And it's like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, isn't that what you were trying to do last year? And the answer was, yes, that is exactly what I was trying to do last year. But see, the thing is that I have a year of knowledge now. And I may not know the exact path forward, but I know exactly what not to do. And I'm absolutely avoiding that at all costs. And that's why we're having this conversation. I don't have the work yet, but I could see it coming. And like, there was a conversation that I had this week that I texted you about that I don't want to say on mic just because I don't want to jinx it. But if that were to come to fruition, I'm talking, I pretty much have to like scale a manufacturing facility and probably get like a handful of guys.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's just, I'm trying to be, I get like all of that. The long story short of that whole thing is strategic growth instead of growth for growth's sake is really the biggest thing. And like after reading the book, also how can, like, as I grow and be more strategic with my growth, how can I be a better leader to the guy that I have currently and the guys coming on in the future? and using like this time where it's basically just me and one other guy, but the other guy in Arizona, I could not talk to him at all. Literally, there's been times where I haven't talked to him in weeks because he just gets the job done. I invoice the customer and they pay. Like, it just happens. I don't have to, but I've just been like trying to like, become more in tune with him and build our systems up a little bit while we have kind of I don't want to say a down period because I'm slammed fucking busy, but just trying to build everything for if new guys come on, what does onboarding look like and things like that.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. I know I can definitely empathize with the whole down period, but not down period. Like, we've had a week or two here and there where it's like, there's a lot of work coming due, but like I have a little bit of a lull, like, waiting for material or something. And it's like, all right, this is like the time to use for, I machined the first op on our 4th axis 90-degree trunnion maybe a week or so ago. I've got, a few more ops, and like, it sounds like this next weekend I'm going to get a chance to make our new Lang vacuum table, because we sold the other one with our orange subplate. And so
nice.
Yeah, little things like that are really nice.
Sick.
Definitely. Well, Chris, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Are we going to do the pumpkin
plan?
Pumpkin plan. I kept wanting to say pumpkin patch.
Dude, same. That's a good one. It's interesting. We mentioned it on the last podcast, and like when it dropped, Easton texted me like almost immediately. And he was like, here I am listening to you talk about this as I email a customer about this very situation. It's like, yeah, let's roll.
And it's by Mike Kalowitz.
Yeah.
The Pumpkin Plan, a simple strategy to grow a remarkable business in any field.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll get it. I'll pick it up and start reading it. And I'm not going to promise a date this time because I royally screwed that up last time. So we will get to it when we get to it. But get the book, read it up, submit any questions you have on it.
Dropping in 2 weeks, guaranteed.
I am pretty sure I said exactly that last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not doing that this time, but get the book. I will post on the Instagram stories as usual on when we're going to go over it. We'll be hopefully sometime soon. I'm trying to do better about consistency with the podcast. I know it's been a little all over the place this year so far, so I apologize to all the listeners. I'm doing my best. It's been a little bit of a rough year.
Yeah, hot take. Running a business is hard, and being like full-time podcaster on top of that is also hard, I imagine. So you can forgive yourself. I
think I need to add more things to my schedule so that I find more time.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, go teach at Puma, so you can scout talent and stuff, and maybe what is it, like, fix up the MR2. You just should dive back into that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Actually, the mechanic next to us, now that he has all that new space, he was like, oh, you should move your MR2 out of the parking lot. It's so small. I'll just give you a corner of the new shop to work on it. I was like,
you're like,
cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's always like been totally fine with me using any of his stuff. And like now he's like, oh, I got all this room now. Like, yeah, just know exactly what corner we'll put it in. We'll put it right there and you can work on it whenever you want. I was like, all right, cool.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
He's a great guy. He is like, he started this as his retirement plan and now like does almost as much money as we do every year by himself, just being a mechanic because he's so good. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. There's so many stories like that. That's just like so funny. It's like, just want to be pretty casual with this. And it's like, really? And it's like, yeah, I just casually started a business. And it's like, it's just so successful. Darn. Like when I hung out with Simon, he took us to a distillery in the Cotswolds called Cotswold. I think it's literally called Cotswolds Distillery. They make whiskey and gin. And I guess like he can correct me if I'm wrong, but like essentially like this guy owned a house overlooking this empty patch, like, or a farm or whatever. And it was like a barn. And he's like, I kind of want to start a business. And he's just like retired. And he's like, I guess we could make some whiskey or whatever. And so he buys the property, starts making whiskey. And then he's like, well, fuck, it's got to be in barrels for like 5 or 7 years. What are we going to do? What are we going to do in the meantime? So I guess we'll make gin. And then make gin and make gin, and it wins awards, and it's really fucking good. And then they like build this reputation that the whiskey comes out, and the whiskey's really fucking good, and the whiskey wins awards, and it's just like and now he's got like 4 or 5 buildings on this property and like a restaurant and stuff. And it's like, yeah, cool.
That's amazing.
Just casually crushing life. Like, it's like, meanwhile, like we're over here like fucking struggling every week.
I know, right? Yeah. Thankfully, this week has not been one of those weeks where I'm like, did I make a mistake? Is this the wrong trade for me? No, this was a really good week, and it was definitely reaffirming of like, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. I will say, like, every time I get close and I'm like, maybe I get like really down in the dumps and I'm like, I'm wrapping it up right now. Fuck it. This guy offered me a job. I'm taking it. And it's like, and then you actually like think about it for a second. And it's like, I'm not answering to that fucking asshole. Like, no thanks. I'm going to build his dream. I would rather go down in flames first than fucking do that. Like, I will bomb out before I go get another job. Like, guaranteed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you again. Everyone go get the pumpkin plan. Thank you to all the Patreon members who make this show possible. Thank you for listening, and I will be back next week.